All right, we're here as the Lost Rider Podcast. Good morning and welcome to the second half of this week's News from the Camp House. We're here this morning with the Republican candidate for House District 85 State Representative, State House Chair, Mr. Dennis Geesaman. He prefers to be called Goose. And now I ended the first half saying we're going to talk a little bit more about LCRA. In a previous interview, we had discussed about possibly trying to introduce elected officials to the LCRA Board. I think it's one of the only river authorities in Texas that doesn't have anyone elected on their board. They're all appointed by the governor. Now, and part of the stuff, there's no argument. LCRA is here to control the river. The question, what is always questionable, is why do we have a state entity competing with private enterprise in the electric business? That part don't make sense. Building high lines, wholesale electricity, got the Hyatt Regency over there in Bastrop. None of this really makes sense. Understand controlling the river. Understand trying to maintain water sources. Okay, and at the same time, at the power plant, we have to have restrictions. I'm going to inject a phrase that we need to hear a whole lot more, and that would be public trust. All your business has to maintain, and everything you should gain public trust. And so if you're going to do that, what is it? Public trust. That's the public trust what you're doing. Whether it's environmentally, whether it's financially, whatever you're doing, you got to maintain public trust. Now, that's a big old mouthful. I'm going to let you run with that.
I think that's absolutely true. And what we see is there's too many cases where there's no elected input to these entities. That goes all the way from the Secretary of State in Texas, who makes decisions about elections and how elections are run. And she's appointed, or the current lady is appointed by the governor. And you can go right on down the line to, you can take that over to federal judges that are appointed for life. And if you don't have some elected input, the same thing goes with the LCRA Board. Having at least moving some elected officials on there gives the people some idea of accountability. And one example I'll use for accountability that affects both Colorado County, Fayette County, and somewhat in Austin County is the Fayette County Power Plant, which is the old coal-fired plant that's been in operation for a long time. And because it provides continuous baseload energy, it's being taxed harder and harder and harder, in my opinion, to make up for the intermittent energy that we're subsidizing, which it doesn't make horse sense at all. So in actually pushing the plant harder and harder and harder, they've also been trying to relax these standards for emissions. And now if that doesn't make sense at all. Specifically, the testing of the ground and the groundwater. For example, selenium is a byproduct of burning coal, and all the fly ash that's stacked up after when they clean out the plant and stacked up outside, and when the rainwater runs into it, it seeps into the ground soil. And so they're asking in the current change in rules, to eliminate testing for selenium. Now, selenium in a minor quantity is something that's considered an antioxidant. You look at your vitamin pills and some of the shots they give to your livestock, there is some amount of selenium, and it's good, but it quickly goes to a toxic level if it's too much. So that's something that needs to be tested. And as we're cranking up the effort of a continuous baseload power plant with the technology from the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, I think instead of relaxing the standards, we need to have higher standards to make sure that at least it's not putting out bad stuff into the creeks, which eventually flows into the Colorado River.
All right, it's public trust. We have to know that the technology is there. We know we have the technology. We can keep this thing running right, keep it running clean. We have to maintain public trust. I always said, and I get off subject, get off track too quick. Bless their heart. That power plant gave jobs to generations of guys my age and a little bit older, and a whole bunch of them a whole lot younger. Bless their heart. Gave jobs to a whole bunch of these country boys who otherwise weren't going to go to college, weren't going to, and I appreciate that. In retrospect, I also say, how do you know private enterprise wouldn't have done the same thing? A private company could have done just exactly the same thing. But I'll give them credit. I say, bless their heart for that. Now, it's a pity that, like you said, they're being taxed so hard on account of all these windmills and solar energy that don't amount to a hill of nothing. But we have to keep the public trust. We can't let we can't let selenium or anything else get away from us here. We got to keep the operation running clean.
And I think really the thing that piqued interest, especially up in the LaGrange area around the Fayette County Power Plant, is that they basically refused to do a public hearing explaining the relaxing in standards, and that's where transparency is just that's the key. I mean, if there's a good explanation, bring it and let me hear it.
Okay, all right. No, that's it. That's it exactly. There was no public hearing on this. There should have been a public hearing on this. There could have been a public hearing on this. It didn't happen, and you must maintain the public trust. You can't buy people off all the time. You got to maintain public trust. So, all right, okay. What else? There's other things. There's so many things that go on, budget wise. We always, being from the outdoor industry, we always try to stand behind Texas Parks and Wildlife. But when you're looking at the budget and you're saying, this thing might be just out of control, sometimes, what is hard and what is not hard, what's conservative and what's liberal when it comes to some of these agencies and just slowing them down a little bit on their spending.
Just in general, the mindset, we've got to get things under control. It's just the answer has always been, okay, yes, we'll do that. I'll step right back to some of the amendments that we did to the Constitution the previous election. 3 of those items on the Constitution were for funding things out of the Constitution. To me, that sounds like an abdication of general responsibility of the legislature. Mm-hmm. That stuff should be put in the budget where it's reviewed every 2 years. The budget from the 88th legislature, which was not this last one, but the one before, started out at $250 billion. And it ended up at the end of the 89th legislature, just a little more than 2 years later, at $352 billion. And so just looking at that on its surface, in a matter of 3 years, the state budget went up 40%. That's just not conservative.
All right. So it's, what they're going to say. If you go to some of these senators that have been sitting there for 20 years, they're going to ask what to cut. They're going to say, well, okay, what are you going to cut? It's the same thing. When you ask a legislator, a rep, or a senator, or whoever, and a constituent asks the question, how are we going to eliminate property taxes, or how are we going to cut the budget? And they turn right around and ask the question back to us. That's not our job. That's not, that's what we elected state reps and senators to do, to keep it in control, to keep our taxes down, to have less government. And that's the job. That's not for us to answer those questions.
Yeah, the job is not just to always say yes. The going into the 88th legislature, there was like a $27 billion. Glenn Hagar was the comptroller, said, okay, we have a $27 billion surplus going into the 88th legislature. It all got spent on new or expanded programs. Mm-hmm. Going into the 89th legislature, it was about $24 billion. And then when they went into the extended session, they found almost another $27 billion. And that all got spent in new or expanded programs. So just some sort of a baseline budgeting where you say, this is what you had last year, and justify any increase. It should be basically no more than the rate of inflation.
All right. Okay. That's a way of looking at it. Okay. You've got a gentleman, and now we're all wondering about what can he actually do? You got a new comptroller now. He's going to run in there and try to play Doge like they did in Washington. I don't know if he can even do that. I think that was a bunch of campaign promises, but people are watching. People want to know.
Mr. Huffines is in there now and is inbound, and I think he'll sweep in there quickly. And I've talked to him several times. I think because he ran against Governor Abbott and there's no love lost between the two of them, I think he's willing to go in there with a knife and start green eye shades, magnifying glass, and a knife. I think he's ready to go in there and do that, and we need that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anything you want to add?
Well, I think one of the main reasons I wanted to run is I see the uniparty in Austin, and we need to get back to conservative values, because I feel like Texas is the last stand. I feel like I hear people say all the time, we need to save Western civilization. I'm a bit of a contrarian. I don't think we need to save Western civilization like the old Western Europe. And Western Europe is, in many ways, submitted to the left and to the Islamic ideas. So American civilization is what we need to save, which is different than European civilization. From the very beginning, American civilization was about the value of the individual, and the value of the individual versus the monarchy or the oligarchy or the House of Lords or the royal family. So that's what we need to get back to, is the value of each individual and his ability to have the right to say something. And then, contrarian again, I say that when people say, well, the American Revolution was 250 years ago, I say, no, it wasn't. We're in the middle of the American Revolution, and I hope it goes on for another 250 years. Thanks.
All right, Goose, thank you. That's good stuff. Okay, that's our Republican candidate for State House District 85. Okay, Mr. Goose Geeseman. Folks, I hope you learned something this morning. Got a little information you can carry with you and figure things out a little bit, and maybe we can do this again somewhere in the future, not too far off. All right, now, this weekend's edition was also brought to us by the Shaw's Bend Social Club, country club folks who don't have a country club. Good deal. Go out, have a big weekend, have lots of fun, be safe, and y'all just remember, pretty much any day is sure a good day to be out in the woods.